In the archives of psychology, there is a test capable of destabilizing a person's sense of self in a matter of minutes. Not through trauma, not through violence, but through perception. What it reveals is not how fragile the world is, but how fragile identity can be. The phenomenon explored in this test is known as self-disintegration under perceptual conflict. In simple terms, it examines what happens when the brain receives information that contradicts its internal model of who I am. Psychologists have long studied identity as something stable. A continuous narrative built from memory, body awareness, and agency. This test challenged that assumption. Participants reported losing the feeling of being a single, unified self. Sometimes within minutes. What makes this phenomenon unsettling is not that it affects a few vulnerable individuals. It affects most people. Under the right conditions. The foundations of this test emerged in the late 20th century, at the intersection of cognitive psychology and neuroscience. Early versions were developed in the 1990s by researchers studying body ownership and self-perception, particularly in laboratories in Sweden, Germany, and the United Kingdom. One of the key figures associated with this line of research is neuroscientist Henrik Ehrsson, whose work focused on how the brain constructs the feeling of self through sensory integration. The scientific question was deceptively simple. Is the sense of self something intrinsic, or something assembled moment by moment? The answer turned out to be deeply unsettling. The test itself is minimalistic. Participants sit in a controlled environment, usually a quiet laboratory. They are not restrained. They are not threatened. They are fully awake and aware. The experiment manipulates sensory alignment. What the participant sees, feels, and perceives as their body. Through mirrors, cameras, or virtual setups, participants are shown a representation of a body that appears to be theirs. At the same time, synchronized touch or movement is applied. Within minutes, many participants report a shift. A sense of detachment from their physical body. A feeling that I am not where I thought I was. Difficulty identifying where their self begins or ends. No pain. No confusion. Just quiet disorientation. What makes this phenomenon particularly disturbing is how easily it translates beyond the laboratory. Similar effects occur in everyday situations, though less dramatically. For example, people experiencing prolonged sensory isolation, such as in certain workplaces or environments, report depersonalization. Individuals exposed to conflicting feedback about their identity, being told one thing while experiencing another, often describe feeling hollow or split. Even excessive screen-mediated interaction can subtly weaken the sense of embodied self over time. The test does not create something new. It exposes something already there. From a neurological perspective, the sense of self is not a single structure. It is an ongoing process. The brain continuously integrates information from vision, touch, proprioception, memory, agency. This integration occurs primarily in regions such as the temporoparietal junction, insula, and prefrontal cortex. When these inputs align, the brain generates a stable sense of me. When they conflict, even slightly, the system destabilizes. The test exploits this vulnerability. It does not break the mind. It reveals its assembly process. The self is not discovered. It is constructed. The unsettling implication is not that identity can be disrupted. It is how easily it happens. The test shows that the feeling of being you is not a fixed essence. It is a fragile agreement between systems. This challenges deeply held assumptions about autonomy, continuity, and control. If the self can dissolve quietly, without force or fear, then identity is not a fortress. It is a balancing act. And most people are unaware they are standing on it. Psychologists note subtle indicators that self-disintegration may be occurring. Persistent feelings of detachment from one's body. A sense of observing oneself from the outside. Difficulty connecting actions with intention. These states are not inherently pathological. But when unrecognized, they can reshape behavior, decision-making, and emotional response. Awareness does not prevent the phenomenon, but it restores context. And context stabilizes identity. The most disturbing aspect of this psychological test is not what it does. It is what it reveals. That the self is not a solid object hidden inside the mind, but a process that must be maintained. No monsters are required to fracture identity. Only perception. Sometimes, the most unsettling truths about the mind are not loud or dramatic. They happen quietly. And by the time you notice them, they are already in motion. If this experiment stayed with you, leave your thoughts below. Do you believe identity is something we possess? Or something the brain simply keeps assembling?